The rain had started just as Margaret Chun stepped out of the restaurant, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. She paused under the awning, watching the storm intensify. Inside, her data hedge fund manager, who'd spent the entire evening talking about his yacht, was still at the table, barely noticing she'd left. She was 53 years old and tired. Tired of men who saw dollar signs when they looked at her. Tired of pretending to be someone she wasn't. "Miss, you all right?" The voice was gentle, concerned. Margaret turned to see a man in his mid-50s standing nearby, holding an umbrella that had seen better days. He wore a simple gray suit that was neat but worn at the edges, and his dark hair was touched with silver at the temples. His face was kind, with lines that spoke of laughter and hardship in equal measure. "I'm fine," she said automatically, then just evaluating my choices. He smiled, understanding in his warm brown eyes. "Bad date, is it that obvious?" "I've raised a daughter," he said simply. "I know that look. The one that says you'd rather be anywhere else?" He glanced back through the window where a young girl in a bright pink unicorn shirt was finishing her ice cream at a corner table, swinging her legs happily. "That's my Emily. 10 years old and already wiser than me about most things." Margaret found herself smiling. "She looks like she's having a better evening than I am." "Best night of her week," he said. "Our Friday tradition. Dinner out, just the two of us." He paused, seeming to make a decision. "Listen, I don't mean to intrude, but it's really coming down out here. Can I walk you to your car? Emily and I, we're just leaving anyway." There was something in his voice, no agenda, no expectation. Just simple human kindness. Margaret realized she couldn't remember the last time someone had offered her help without wanting something in return. "That would be lovely," she said quietly. "Thank you." The little girl appeared at his side, her face brightening. "Dad, we helping someone?" "This is Miss Margaret," he said. "We're going to walk her to her car because it's raining pretty hard." "I'm Emily," the girl announced proudly. "My dad always helps people. Last week he helped Mrs. Rodriguez carry her groceries up 3 flights of stairs. Did he now?" Margaret felt something warm settle in her chest. "I'm David, by the way," he said, a bit embarrassed. "David Santos. And Emily's making me sound much better than I am." They walked together through the rain, David holding the umbrella high enough to shelter all 3 of them. Emily chattered about her week at school, about her science project on butterflies, about how her dad made the best pancakes even though they always came out a little burnt. "He tries really hard," Emily said seriously, looking up at Margaret with clear, earnest eyes. "Since Mom passed away, he does everything. He braids my hair for school, even though he's not very good at it yet. And he works 2 jobs so I can stay in my school with my friends." "Emily," David said gently, his voice thick. "It's okay, Dad. You do work hard. You should be proud." Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. She thought of her empire, her wealth, the loneliness of her penthouse. This man, struggling to make ends meet, was richer than she'd ever been. When they reached her Cara Amata sedan, she'd driven herself in, not wanting to arrive. With the driver, Margaret turned to them. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle. "Hey, you," she said. "Both of you. You've made my evening so much better." David smiled that warm smile again. "Just doing what anyone should do. Take care of yourself, Miss Margaret." She watched them walk away, the man and his daughter, sharing one worn umbrella, and she made a decision. The next morning, Margaret sat in her corner office on the 47th floor, looking out over the city. She'd built her tech company from nothing, weathered the storms of a male-dominated industry, and created something that employed thousands, but lately, it had all felt hollow. She picked up her phone and called her head of HR. "I want to set up a scholarship program," she said, "for children who've lost a parent, full tuition, books, everything. And I want to create a fund for single parents in our area, help with bills, groceries, unexpected expenses. Anonymous. I don't want recognition." "Of course, Ms. Chunin. Any particular reason for the timing?" Margaret thought of David's kind eyes, of Emily's bright smile, of the simple act of sharing an umbrella. "Someone reminded me what matters," she said softly. 2 weeks later, Margaret found herself walking past that same restaurant. And there, at a corner table, were David and Emily, having their Friday dinner. Before she could talk herself out of it, she walked inside. "Miss Margaret." Emily's face lit up. "Dad, look, it's the lady from the rain." David stood, surprised and pleased. "What a coincidence. Would you like to join us?" Margaret slid into the booth, and for the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. They talked about everything and nothing. David worked as a school janitor during the day and did bookkeeping for small businesses at night. He spoke about his late wife Sarah, with such love that Margaret's heart ached. He spoke about the joy of watching Emily grow, about the small victories that made hard days worthwhile. "I'm not fancy," he said at one point, almost apologetically. "I can't offer much, but Emily and I, we've got something good here. Something real. That's worth more than you know," Margaret said, meaning every word. In the months that followed, they kept meeting for Friday dinners. Margaret never mentioned her company, her wealth, the fact that her face had been on the cover of Forbes. She was just Marguerite, a woman who enjoyed spending time with a good man and his wonderful daughter. David never asked for anything, never angled for advantage. He just offered friendship, conversation, laughter. He brought her homemade soup when she mentioned having a cold. He listened when she talked about feeling adrift in her life. He shared his dreams, modest and beautiful, to see Emily graduate college. To maybe one day open a small bookstore. Emily drew pictures for her, talked to her about school, asked her opinion on everything, from math homework to friendship troubles. The girl's trust, freely given, meant more to Margaret than any business deal she'd ever closed. One evening, 6 months after that rainy night, David took a deep breath over coffee. "Margaret, I need to be honest about something. I've developed feelings for you. Real feelings. But I need you to know I have nothing to offer you. I live paycheck to paycheck. My apartment is small. I can't give you fancy things or exciting adventures. I'm just ... me." Margaret reached across the table and took his hand. "David, I need to be honest too." She told him everything. About the company, the money, the success that had left her empty. About how meeting him and Emily had reminded her what it meant to be human, to connect, to care. David sat back, stunned. "You get quotes re ... You've been ... I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted someone to see me, just me, not what I had or what I could provide." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, that same warm smile that had first drawn her to him. "I do see you, Margaret. I see someone kind and thoughtful, who makes my daughter laugh. I see someone who listens when I talk about my day, even the boring parts. That's who you are to me. The rest is just ... details." Emily, who'd been listening with wide eyes, piped up, "Does this mean you can help Dad with his dream bookstore?" They both laughed, the tension breaking. "Maybe," Margaret said, looking at David, "if he'll let me. As a friend, as a partner, as family," Emily said firmly, "because that's what we're becoming, right?" Margaret felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I'd like that very much." David stood and pulled her into an embrace. "You walked into our lives on a rainy night," he whispered, "and everything changed. Not because of what you have, but because of who you are." "You helped me first," she whispered back. "You offered me your umbrella when you didn't have to. That changed everything." Outside, it had started to rain again, gentle and soft. But inside, in the warmth of that small restaurant booth, with David's arms around her and Emily beaming at them both, Margaret finally felt like she'd come home. Sometimes, the richest moments in life come not from what we have, but from what we give. A kind word, a shared umbrella, a simple act of human decency on a rainy night. These are the things that matter, the things that last, the things that remind us why we're here. And sometimes, when we're brave enough to see past the surface, we find that the most valuable treasures are the people who love us, not for what we can give them, but for who we are.